Hey guys, Ted from Nerdarchy here, for Nerds by Nerds, hanging out with some of my esteemed colleagues.
Dave.
Nate.
And today we got a question from Mike McLeroy, and that's how do you GM with minimal players?
It's funny you should ask that, Ted, or Mike McLeroy. I actually just ran a game with 2 players last night.
All right.
So my family game is only 3 players to begin with. And,
All right.
and my daughter did not feel like participating, and she decided to go to my mother-in-law's for the night instead. So I only had 2 players.
All right.
And basically I ran it just like I would run any other session with 2 players. No. So one of the things I did...
So you TPK'd them.
Yes, pretty much. You don't want to make them feel like you're going easy on them just because there are only 2 players.
Mm.
So one of the things I did is I recommended that they make sure they have a healer's kit.
Mm-hmm.
Which I recommend everyone has at least one healer's kit in the party.
Pro tip for you guys out there, when you make your character, it's 5 gold.
Buy it.
Buy a healer's kit. It will save your life.
If you're a human and you take the healer feat, buy 3 healer's kits.
So that was step 1. Step 2 was they had already ran a few sessions, so they had some loot to sell, and they were selling it.
All right.
So I did something I would not normally do.
What was that?
I allowed them to buy healing potions. Because neither of them was a healer. And, again, there's only 2 of them.
Right.
So I let them purchase 5 of the basic healing potions out of the PHB. Now, generally, I actually remove them from my game. I don't allow players to buy them. And I just kind of did it like... And I also did it in a way that said, hey, this is not a regular thing in-game. Like, so the merchant they were dealing with is like,
There's a traveling guy.
No. He's got a shop there in Griffin Gaff. But
Okay.
he's like... These just came in this morning, and I'm going to give you guys a first crack at them.
Nice.
And I actually just gave them the healer's kit as a bonus because they just spent a bunch of money in his shop.
Okay.
So 5 healer potions between 2 players, and hopefully, hopefully it'll help.
Hey, 5 healer's potions. That's better than a cleric.
Yeah, except for they don't recharge.
It's better than a cleric for a single session.
Well, that's true, but they're on the river rat, sailing down the river of Griffin Gaff right now,
Okay.
and they'll be gone for 6 days, so they have to make them last.
Mm.
So so essentially, like, what you want to do is when you have minimal players, you need to make sure that you can somehow you have to figure out those party roles that are going to be missing, right? Because you're down by half the party minimum,
Right.
in my opinion. So they have a spellcaster and a fighter, which at least they have that because that's a decent combination if you only have 2 to work with.
Yes.
A fighter and a cleric would probably be a little bit better.
Right.
But, that works. So, so you want to shore up the weak points. In this case, it was by making sure they had some healing to draw on. And then you're just going to have to adjust the encounters down. You can't give them the same amount of encounters you would normally. Like, one of the one encounter that they had during the session was there was more role-playing encounters than there were combat, for one. But, the one combat encounter that they had was with bullywogs and a giant frog. And so I had fighting going all around the ship around them to make it feel, kind of like more dangerous, more threatening. But I was only going to have them deal with whatever's in front of them.
Right. There was the atmosphere and the threat
of other stuff.
Of other stuff. But until it got in their face, they weren't really being pulled into it.
And during the session, we were able to work out the verbal somatics to Cloud of Daggers.
Okay.
When fighting a frog.
Okay.
So what you have to do when you're fighting frogs, you have to ask them what's red and green and goes really fast. And then you cast a spell.
Nice.
So that's how I've handled it. And in the past, again, it's just a matter of not throwing a lot of challenges at them that they're not going to be able to cover. Mm-hmm. And you don't need to. And it kind of sets you up to almost have like different kinds of adventures than you might normally do. Like, there's a ton of books where it is really just like a duo. Mm-hmm. My favorite, one of my favorite series is 2 fighters.
Gortrok
and Felix, and one of them is basically like a swashbuckler, and the other one is, oh my god, I don't know what you call the Slayer. He's a Slayer.
He's a barbarian.
That's probably the closest thing is like a barbarian.
So, in my opinion, the basic DM tip of plan your session for your players winds up, covering, the general. So if you say, all right, well, if you've got a situation where you've got the fighter and the sorcerer, you want to choose monsters that are going to do, less hit point damage because they don't have a cleric. You want to do like intelligent puzzles or, easy to find traps because they don't have a rogue. So you're gonna
so you put things out there for them to figure out.
Right. So this way, they're still dealing with the type of encounters that you typically would normally have out there, but you aren't overtaxing their resources. Essentially, you're building your story for the characters that you've got, so you want to put things that they can get through. Now, the dice are always going to come into it, and, who knows how things are going to go, but if you've got it geared towards, okay, well, these guys are a little bit weaker. You're not going to throw out the orcs with the 14 strength swinging the great axe because there's no one to put that fighter back together.
Right.
So you've got to choose things that are going to fit, that are going to still be challenging, but not,
in that particular game too. Even when everybody's there, my third player is a shifter bard.
Right.
Which I kind of kit bashed the shifter together before Watts released the PDF. And so right away, that character is suboptimal for what they do.
Right.
And, a bard doesn't... They have variety and they do some cool stuff, but they don't have many spells.
Right.
So, so that was just something that had to be worked with. And I don't think it matters. Like, I hate that group that goes, well, you got to play this and I got to play this, and they pigeonhole all the roles, and everyone's got to be it. And it's usually another player telling other players what they should be because a niche isn't filled.
Right.
Yeah, I already picked the fighter, so
Someone's going to have
to be the cleric.
No,
Yeah.
I'm like with the game that you ran online last week. I specifically said, hey, look, I'm open to multiple options here. What is the party going to actually need? And nobody else chimed in spellcaster, so
we ended up with 3,
and then we wound up with 3 of them. So it was kind of amusing. But I mean, we did have the bases covered. We had a rogue, we had fighters, we had spellcasters, and we had one healer.
Who was the healer?
The druid.
Oh yeah, we had a druid. Yeah, I was like, there's no cleric, but
No, there wasn't a cleric, but we had the druid.
Yeah.
And he was a spellcaster druid, so it was pretty cool.
The whole balanced party concept only really works once that party is all together and cohesive. The second that you guys get separated, well, all right, well, the cleric's over here, and I need healing 130 feet over here, so it doesn't really help that cleric was in the party at that moment anyway. So it's all like situational and getting the party to be in one spot. And at the same time, you can really do okay with 2 bards that have healing word and a few other things, and maybe a paladin for getting the people back up off the ground. For me, I actually go the other way for small party groups, especially with 5th. I've done it previously in other editions, but in 5th, I feel like the combat, like a deadly encounter, can either be totally kill all the party, or it could just be a wash and get smashed. So it's kind of like there's that variability in it that I feel that numbers really kind of average it out better. So I would prefer, rather than trying to do smaller encounters, I would prefer actually them finding or hiring people to actually join them. So whatever they're saying, like, well, we're 2 wizards and we're not going to go adventuring on our own kind of concept. We're going to hire 2 mercenaries and some kind of medic.
I absolutely hate that.
See, now, I specifically mean they go and they find people, or they find people on the road. Not only this, hey, Elmister shows up, and he's going to tell you what you need to do next, and he's also going to hang out with you and destroy everything in this path.
The problem...
So that's why I say it's acceptable to do that, because in the end, you're not saying, like, well, these people are running the show now.
Right.
You're their boss, in a sense. Yeah, they want to live, and they're not going to just do things that get them killed. But the 2 people that hired them are the party leaders, in a sense. It's not going to be like the fighter running the show now because he showed up, which is really me. Right. So it's more like them interacting with those new party members. And it also brings into the concept, well, one of them gets hurt or one of them gets killed. What do you do? it's not another PC, so there's that level of you need to kind of act like they're real people.
They're people too.
They're people too. So it's kind of, but they're obviously not, because they're just a mental construct of you and the DM. So it's not like there's a person sitting across. Well, we're leaving your dead body in the gorge. Sorry, buddy. He's like, but just bring me back to the healer.
Like we did to Mark. No, yeah, but I understand what you're saying is like, okay, you're not bringing on players that are going to take over the game, but you still are bringing in other characters that are going to hog the spotlight. Whether intentionally or not. And that's what I don't like that. I want the focus to always be on my players. I want them to be in control of everything that's going on, and to feel like it's their actions that will dictate what happens.
Well, that's why I say that the hirelings is the best situation in that, because they're most likely lower level. You wouldn't normally be able to afford someone of higher caliber than you. And you would also be in charge, because in essence you're paying for them to do what you want. So
and that's what I mean when I say I understand what you're saying, where you're coming from, but I still feel like even though you told them to do it, they still did it. Like, you're like, lift that portcullis, and they're like, and they lift it. But at the end of the day, like, they accomplished the thing. All you did is say, go do it.
Rather than figuring out how's two wizards going to get around this portcullis.
My issue that I have with the hired hands is, I see a little bit about what you say. I totally get what you're saying, Nate. But ultimately, the DM has to track all the different things, and if they say, okay, well, I'm going to go hire a fighter or two fighters, it's one more thing that you as the DM
or two more things,
need to handle. Because what happens if the player's like, okay, while we're walking, hey, I'm just going to start having a conversation with this guy. Yes, 5th edition really gives you the ability to just quickly put together an NPC. Especially with the awesome new DM screen, you can make a couple of rolls or make a couple choices and pick who this guy is and whatnot. But it's still something that you have to keep track of. You still have to take care of, even if you give the stats to the players and say, okay, well, during combat, you have to take care of this.
Yeah, control that.
It's still one more piece of the puzzle that you need to be aware of, that you need to keep track of. If you're using a grid system, you got to put out some kind of miniature or representative of these new guys. That.
And you got to make sure, even though like your players are controlling them in combat, they're not abusing them.
Right. Oh, go stand in front of this thing so I don't get hit.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that.
Well, there's the DMG has that whole loyalty stat thing. So I mean, you could bring that into play if you wanted to.
So
for runability, what you're saying, I understand exactly what you're saying. We don't all have Nate's level 12 intellect, and we can't actually manipulate things with our mind in 7 different places at the same time.
It's just like having 2 or 3 more monsters. It's just the monsters aren't trying to kill the PCs. They're trying to kill the other monsters.
Or are they?
Indeed, sir. Indeed.
So we essentially have Nate's method of
hirelings.
Keep track of extra 2 or 3 people.
And then me and Ted are kind of like, well, you just adjust the adventure down. And that's what I like. I think, personally for me, I just rather build a different kind of adventure for, the duo as opposed to the trio or the quartet.
If you've got players that are super role players, there is nothing wrong with saying, you know what? You guys are just going to role play tonight.
We're in town.
Do we tell them that, or does it just happen?
Well, the GM's going to make that decision.
And his internal monologue is, they're going to just role play.
Their players are looking at you. Is he looking at each other and then looking at you?
It's
is he talking to himself?
Is he going to murder us, or is he?
You could do an investigative situation. They've got to solve, some kind of dilemma or problem that, they're still rolling dice to try and make investigation checks, perception checks, look for things, but not actually have to engage in combat.
Or like with a party like that, I think it'd be really fun if you and it's a lot easier in 5th edition if you were to do like a thief campaign where your players are all basically criminals and you're doing heists and stuff like that. With the small numbers, it still kind of works. Whether someone's a rogue or someone takes the criminal or urchin backgrounds, you kind of have the skill sets that you need, and you can have a fun game. and then it becomes like was it Gray Mauser and Falfer or
Yeah.
what's? I'm probably butchering the names. You guys can tell me in the comments below. Or even Conan. A lot of the Conan stories are like that as well, where he's Conan the Barbarian, but there's a lot of times he's like Conan the Thief too. So it does lend itself to a different kind of game. And that's how you have to go at it. Like if you're thinking dungeon crawl, standard D&D-esque module type of adventure, yeah, you're probably gonna have a hard time.
Yeah, you're gonna have to modify the crap out of that thing.
To me, you're just
Cody almost killed us the first game. All three of us almost killed us.
Yeah, it really.
It wasn't that terrible of a challenge rating wise, but it was just there's three of us. Well, we were been kind of beat up, and it wasn't a good time.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it was fun, but it wasn't a good time for the actual characters. They were getting beat.
When you have less than 4, I think an XP chart becomes a division. Just like you have more, it becomes a multiplication or whatever. So, or however it works. But basically, the way it reads in the DMG is for under 4 players, it changes the modifiers
That's
as well.
true, yeah.
Just like if you
So it
have
probably
over.
worked more towards a deadly encounter, but.
Well, that's a good possibility.
Well, I'm going to have CR creature and a few kobolds. Really, how bad could it be? It was bad.
I don't know how that was. It's really
It was bad.
Oh my god!
Yeah, but it was really fun. I liked almost dying.
Well, yeah, it's good. When there's like that threat in the game.
Someone had to use their inspiration on their last saving throw, versus death. So
like
it was pretty good.
The dungeon crawl isn't really like when you have reduced numbers. The dungeon crawl isn't really the best kind of game, or you really have to modify it.
Mystery, political intrigue, a cityscape campaign where you can really, hem in. I mean, so you're not going to come upon an owlbear. I mean, you decide what's going to happen, but it's not realistic for like a mob of orcs to just come in and be like, we're going to kill you guys
in town.
So
it's very unrealistic.
Very unrealistic to have 4 orcs just appear in town magically
with imps.
All right. Well, Matt, you said magically. Everything's on the table when you say that word. All right.
So do we have any specific tips we want to give people as far as, is your tip hirelings?
My tip is memorable hirelings that are weaker than the party, whatever the party is, because you don't want them to outshine the party.
My tip is the core DM tip: plan for your players. So if you've got heavy role players at your table, just shirk combat and let them do a role play type session, regardless of as we were saying, investigative, researching, murder mystery, political. There's plenty of options out there that are just talky. Still going to require dice rolls. Still gonna have player interactivity. Just no sword swinging.
I'm going to go with what you said. Plan for your players. Now, it just so happens that the other night that I did haggling and gambling and arm wrestling competitions. Nice. And some combat. It just happened to work that way, but I would say I wouldn't back off of combat situations just because I have limited players. I would just change the combats themselves.
No, I mean, and that's always an option. I was just saying, that if you've got players that are really into role playing, then that becomes an option.
Okay, yeah, you need that specific type of player.
Your players were new, so they're not fully there yet.
Yeah, big on role playing. So with that, you guys, you can put your tips down below in the comments, like, share, subscribe even.
You can check us out on Facebook. You
can also join the conversation on Reddit.
So until next time, stay nerdy.
Has some loot to sell, and they're selling it.
All right.
So I did something I would not normally do.
What was that?
I allowed them to buy healing potions because neither of them was a healer, and again, there's only 2 of them.
Right.
So I let them purchase 5 of the basic healing potions out of the PHB. Now, generally, I actually remove them from my game. I don't allow players to buy them, and I just kind of did it and I also did it in a way said, hey, this is not a regular thing in game. Like, so the merchant they were dealing with is
there's a traveling guy.
No. He
with minimal players.
It's funny you should ask that, Ted or Mike McLeroy. I actually just ran a game with 2 players last night.
All right.
So my family game is only 3 players to begin with, and
all right.
And my daughter did not feel like participating, and she decided to go to my mother-in-law's for the night instead. So I only had 2 players.
All right.
And basically, I ran it just like I would run any other session with 2 players. Now, so one of the things I did...
So you TPK'd them.
Yes, pretty much. You don't want to make them feel like you're going easy on them just because there are only 2 players.
Mm.
So one of the things I did is I recommended that they make sure they have a healer's kit.
Mm-hmm.
Which I recommend everyone has at least one healer kit in the party.
Pro tip for you guys out there: when you make your character, it's 5 gold.
Buy it.
Buy a healer's kit. It will save your life.
If you're a human and you take the healer feat, buy 3 healer's kits.
So that was step 1. Step 2 was they had already ran a few sessions, so he's got a shop there in Griffin Gaff, but
Okay.
he's like, these just came in this morning, and I'm going to give you guys a first crack at them.
Nice.
And I actually just gave them the healer's kit as a bonus because they just spent a bunch of money in his shop.
Okay.
So 5 healer potions between 2 players, and hopefully, hopefully it'll help.
Hey, 5 healer's potions. That's better than a cleric.
Yeah, except for they don't recharge.
Well, it's better than a cleric for a single session.
Well, that's true.
Hey guys, Ted from Nerdarchy here, for Nerds by Nerds, hanging out with some of my esteemed colleagues.
Dave.
Nate.
And today we got a question from Mike McLeroy, and that's how do you GM